Hello, I am Stephen Garvey, member of the National Citizens Alliance. Today I will share with you how some of your tax dollars are being spent. If you're angered, frustrated, disillusioned by these facts, then I ask you to share this video with as many Canadians as possible. First, you need to know that your tax dollars are borrowed money, as Canada is a debtor nation. The federal debt is over $646 billion and growing, and the national debt is around $1.4 trillion. Every dollar the federal government is handing out overseas is money owed to commercial banks with interest payments. As a country, we are paying over $63 billion in annual debt service payments to commercial banks. The last 7 years, the federal government has had deficits in the range of $25 to $30 billion, which translates into higher federal debt and higher debt service payments. To understand what is going on, imagine a Canadian household heavily in debt on the path to bankruptcy. Yet the household hands out thousands of dollars to foreigners on a credit card, while ignore the needs of its own family members. It is unsustainable. It is morally despicable. It is financially specific examples of how your tax dollars are currently being spent. $5.165 billion average annually since 2005 of our tax dollars on foreign aid, with nearly $1 billion annually undisclosed. In 2011, $5.723 billion on foreign aid. In 2015, $5.842 billion on foreign aid. $650 million of our tax dollars for foreign reproductive health. $20 million of our tax dollars to the Clinton Foundation. $840 million of our tax dollars to Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon. $64.5 million of our tax dollars to the Syrian Refugee Fund. $785 million of our tax dollars for AIDS, TB, malaria. $450 million of our tax dollars for UN peacekeeping. $2.65 billion of our tax dollars to the Climate Change Fund. $1.6 billion of our tax dollars to the UN regular budget 2016 to 2018. $24 billion annually of our tax dollars on immigration and refugees. $1.5 million of our tax dollars that is disclosed on attaining a non-veto seat on the Security Council. As examples, in 2016, the federal government handed out our tax dollars to these countries. $122.6 million of our tax dollars to Bangladesh, where incidentally the recent New York terrorists came from. $189.9 million of our tax dollars to Ethiopia. $61.5 million of our tax dollars to Iraq. $110.1 million of our tax dollars to Haiti. $58.7 million of our tax dollars to Lebanon. $124.8 million of our tax dollars to Mali. $104.5 million of our tax dollars to Nigeria. $120.6 million of our tax dollars to Pakistan. $69.9 million of our tax dollars to Syria. $29.3 million of our tax dollars to Yemen. $67.6 million of our tax dollars to the West Bank and Gaza Strip. The National Citizens Alliance believes that the fundamental duty of the federal government is to serve the Canadian people. It is not to be a foreign charity with our tax dollars. In addition, the National Citizens Alliance believes that the Canadian people and Canada should and must come first. We should give to foreigners in need when we are in a position to give. When there is a humanitarian crisis, we should give what we can afford without compromising our own people in need. We have a growing homeless problem. We have many seniors who struggle to get by. We have a healthcare system that is overburdened and underfunded. We have remote First Nations peoples living in squalid conditions. We have high unemployment. We have thousands of injured veterans falling through the cracks in the Veterans Review and Appeal Board. As mentioned, our high debt of $646 billion is growing, as are the interest payments in the billions to commercial banks, which means less and less and less of our tax dollars for the Canadian people. We need to look after our own people before we give to the rest of the world. Yet, the federal globalist political conglomerate, comprised of 4 parties, is borrowing from our children, our grandchildren's future, in order to hand out billions of our tax dollars annually to other countries and foreign special interests. At the same time, the establishment conglomerate allows around $310 billion annually in Canadian revenue to flow into tax havens. The National Citizens Alliance rejects the post-national globalist agenda that seeks to stamp out nationalism and the Euro-Canadians who are the creators of Canada. Instead, the National Citizens Alliance supports a renewed Canadian nationalism, both culturally and economically, instilling a renewed sense of pride in Canada and her people. This agenda can be realized by you, the Canadian people. You have the power if you exercise it. Our future generations depend on it. From a broader perspective, many of the countries that receive foreign aid are rich in natural resources and mired in corruption. On top of this, the International Monetary Fund and World Bank have traditionally loaded these countries down with debt and economic obligations that were conditions of the financial aid. A famous example is Bolivia and its water war that started in 1999. The World Bank demanded that Bolivia privatize its water resources. After much struggle, in 2006, under President Morales, Bolivia legislated water as a public resource and banned international banking cartels and multinational corporations from the Bolivian soil. And now Bolivia has the fastest growing economy in South America. We as a country should cut all but emergency funding to chronic foreign aid recipients until the underlying problems are addressed and corrected, and we have addressed our own significant financial issues. This is common sense and puts our people and country first.